What is up, everyone? Welcome to the video. Wolfie here from the Rage Traders, and today I've got an absolute banger for you, but a bit of a unique one because I'm going to be doing an ultimate beginner's guide for NRL Supercoach for anyone that is brand new to the game, or they might be coming over from another platform and they haven't played Supercoach before, i.e. could be NRL Fantasy. It literally could be Fantasy Premier League for EPL. And you just want to know how it all works. So this is going to be the video for you. I'm not going to go into too much detail about like strategies, etc. It's more like, how does Supercoach work, the things you need to know to have the best possible chance of being a good Supercoach player, and understanding like what the goal is and how you should start and all the little in-betweens. So before we get into the video, if you could kindly like, subscribe, and comment on the YouTube video. And also, if you're listening on Spotify podcasts or Apple podcasts, 5-star rating would be absolutely appreciated, because we do have, or I should say, I do have a brand new podcast that I've been doing, and the support's been amazing. So thank you so much for that. All right. So let's get into NRL Supercoach. We're here right now. I've made a dummy team. Do not take this team as my actual team. I've just slotted in some players in random positions and I've gone with that. So when you start with NRL Supercoach, you're going to have $11,950,000 to use to make your fantasy team. Now, it is not bad to have a bit of money left over. Generally, I would recommend anywhere between sort of like 30 to 100K is a nice mark, but that is up to you. That is completely personal preference. So what you see here is basically a full team that I've made, but let's go through the positions and how you need to address them. So you have 2 hookers, you have 4 front row forwards, then you have 6 second row forwards, you have 2 halfbacks, you have 2 5/8s, then you have 7 CTWs, which stands for wing centers or center wings. And then you have 2 fullbacks with a flex position. Now, the flex position was introduced last season, and it was introduced because essentially, I think a lot of people were complaining that one of their players would get a really, really bad score and it would kind of fumble their round and they'd get upset about it. So they introduced the flex. So essentially, what the flex now allows you to do is to bring in any player from any position into that category in the flex spot, and then basically have an extra chance of scoring more points because one of your lower scores or your lower score will get removed out once one round is completed. But we'll get into that a bit later, but I'm just letting you know what the flex is there for. Okay, so starting off with how you make your team. Now, I'm not going to be like, you just select players and that's it. There is a bit of an art behind it, and we'll go through that. So essentially what you need to do is you need to define what type of strategy you're going to play. So you might be the type of player that is super passive, and you want to just have a lot of players that are cheapish, a lot of players that you think will make money, a lot of players that aren't too high in price value. Now, players that are high in price value, that are really at the tippity top of the mountain, are called uber premiums. These guys are your top of the echelon, who should be getting you a consistent amount of points per week on the higher side. Now, you generally do not want to start with a lot of high price premiums. What you want to do is actually have players that you think are going to make you money, whether they be super cheap and super low, or they be sort of in the middle. Maybe they got injured a fair bit last season and their price went down because of it, but now they're looking a bit healthy and they're back to play full time, obviously trying to get more minutes or more scores, and that there makes them a bit more valuable. So how do we define what a player, or what value a player has? The term is called break even. Now, I know some of you might be like, why is this guy talking about break even? But if you are brand new to Supercoach and you don't know what break even is, it's going to be very tough for you. So a break even is the score that specific player needs to score to literally break even and not lose you money. So you can see here, let's use Jermaine Hopgood as an example. His break even is 53. So if in the first game and I'll get into another thing a bit later, but I'll just use the first game as an example. If he scored exactly 53 in the first game, he wouldn't lose or gain money because he's neutralized his score. He would get 53 and that's it. But if he got 54, he would gain money. If he got 52, he would lose money. Now, obviously, the severity of that is way more because generally players would be a bit higher or a bit lower. So that's how you manage a player in terms of knowing if they're going to make you money or if they're not going to make you money. Now, what you'll see throughout the season is players be even at negative break evens, which means as long as they play, no matter what they score, they're going to make money. Now, you want to look for players that are going to make you money as much as possible in the start of the season. Now, generally, the players that will make you the most money are called cheapies. These are players like this gentleman here, David Farley. He's a 24 break even with $235,600 price tag on his name. So if he does play, he is likely to get anywhere from 28, 30, 40 points, you don't know. And he has a likelihood or more chance of actually giving you more money back on the return. So in terms of what you're doing and how you're creating your team, well, you're just looking for players of value and mixing that maybe with a couple or a few uber premiums or premiums to then give you a solid score by the end of the week. But again, that strategy is up to you. Whether you want to go really aggressive and have high price players all round in a sense, and then go just cheapies, which in a sense is called guns and rookies from other sort of fantasies I've played, or you want to go mid-price madness and it's a lot of mid-price players where you think they'll all make money, or you just want to go a really, really cheap team and have a bit left over. It's completely up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Now, on top of that, why I spoke before about in the first round, if Jermaine Hopgood scored this, he would make money or lose money. In Supercoach, it's a bit different. So this is where things are going to get a bit technical, and mostly in the whole video, this is mostly could be the most confusing part. So in a normal fantasy game, well, ones that I've played, whether it be FPL, so EPL's fantasy, whether it be even NRL fantasy and a lot of other fantasies like AFL fantasy, Supercoach is a bit different. So these other fantasies, after 1 week, a player's price will change. Straight up. So hypothetically, Payne Haas, he comes into round 1. His break even is 87 at the moment. He comes in and has a horror game, gets 43. He's going to lose money instantly. In Supercoach, it's different. Up until the 3rd round completion, that is when the prices will change. So for the first 2 weeks, you get to monitor and analyze every single player, every single match, how every single stat has looked for free. This is a very, very powerful tool and piece of information you can have to utilize and capitalize on your team as efficiently as possible, because you're not getting penalized for some of the bad picks you've gotten or you've made. So why this is important is because you then have trades that you can make. Now, I don't know the exact amount of trades they're going to give us this season. Generally, it's in between 40 to 46. Don't quote me on it. It could be something new. It could be around there. It could be a bit more. But generally, per week, you have 2 trades to make. But you also have what's called boosts. Now, you get 5 boosts in a season, and a boost allows you to make 1 more trade on top of your 2. So in the first weeks, a lot of people like to play aggressive and boost their trades because they're getting free information on players and they can make as much money or have their team in the best position as possible. So this is why you'll hear a lot of content creators say, oh, I'm going to double boost week 1 and week 2 to get my team in the best position for round 3, for week 3. Because that's when the price changes happen. That is a super important aspect. Now, one thing I will say is just because you have the boost there at the start of the season, if your team is looking good, you feel like they're in a good spot, you don't have to do that. So don't feel pressured by that. On top of that, how you find these valuable players. Now, if you are completely brand new to Supercoach and you're like, well, how do I know what players to pick? I would advise doing 2 things. One is listening to content creators like SC Playbook, the Supercoach Experience, Brandon Savage, who I know very well. He does some really good podcasts and videos with Timmy. You've got people like the Rugby League Guru, myself, Arman Talk Supercoach, Insight Fantasy Sports. There's a plethora of guys that are going to help you out so you can study and look at the cheapies, or just type it in Google if you don't feel like listening, so on and so forth. There's also another way you can look at stuff, and that is a site I really like called NRL SC Stats, NRLSupercoachStats.com. And essentially what this allows you to do is go through player profiles from like 2025. I can search up any player. Let's say it's Haas. Maybe I'm really interested in Tohu Harris. Let's just say someone else, Emre Gula. I can look how he went last season, what he averages in base. There's a ton of information you can utilize to help you pick better players. Now, on top of that, they have a draw functionality, which I really like using. The draw is really important because it allows you to see who is upcoming or who has an upcoming draw that's quite easier than others. It's color coded, so obviously you can imagine green is quite easy or easier. Yellow is like moderate. Orangey is like it's getting pretty hard, and red is like it's going to be a really tough match for them to score Supercoach points. So take that as you will. Take it as a grain of salt as well, because there's some players out there that are bulletproof, and essentially don't worry about that. Okay, so I've given you information on sort of how you're going to create your team. Now let's just go back a tiny bit and let's talk about the price changes based off the break-evens. Now, again, this is a little bit of a different thing with Supercoach. So the first score in Supercoach is the least important. Let me explain why. Supercoach works off a rolling 3-game average. So what that means is essentially if I have a high price premium, let's say it's Payne Haas. His price is $852,700. Yeah? I'm going to go into my calculator. You're not going to see this. But let's say in his first game, right? In his first game, he goes for a whopping 160 points. But then in his second game, he only gets 30. And then in his fourth game, he only gets 42. Now, with that being said, it's a huge first game. You're laughing, you're cheering, you had him as captain. If I total them together though, it only comes at 232 points. If I divide it by 3, it's then 77 points. His break even is 87. Now, why the first score is the least important is because Supercoach, again, as I said before, is based off the previous 3-game rolling average. So the first score that every player scores in Supercoach is actually going to be the first score that disappears. So once they play round 4, the scores that are only going to count for them are week 2, week 3, and week 4. First week disappears. So why I'm actually telling you this is it's very important to understand how the averaging works, but it's also very important to not get baited in by a first week huge score and then they plateau and go really low in the second and third week, and then you're getting baited off a disguised average. And in the fourth round, let's say before I said Haas went 160, 20, and 45, I think I said, okay? Now, if I go 20 plus 45, then in the next match, he only goes to 52. His new rolling average is 117 divided by 3, which is only a 39. Very bad. So I hope that explains to you how the averaging works out for Supercoach and how it is going to affect you if you get baited in by just one big score that's in the start of the rolling average. On top of that, we have vice captains and captains. Let me go back one. Let me just go back one step, because I did talk about trades and I talked about boosting. Now, around the origin period and certain buy periods, you will have the ability to have 3 trades and a boost. I did just want to mention that. So you're always not locked in to 2 trades and 1 boost. there will be times where there are quite a lot of major buys or the origin period where you'll get extended opportunities to make a bit more trades. So when you look at a content creator or listen to a content creator, when it comes to that time, that's going to be really important. Also, back to the draw section, understanding where the buys are for certain players in your team, again, massive. You don't want to be in round 5 and buying a Manly player for round 5, and then in round 6 they have a buy, and you're like, oh, that's not good. You can see in round 15, Melbourne, Manly, Newcastle, North Queensland, and St. George have a buy. So in round 14, if you bought 3 of those players from 3 different teams, you're screwing yourself over. So being prepared for the buys are absolutely huge, and being prepared for Origin is absolutely huge as well. If you don't know what Origin is, it's basically a time in the middle of sort of the season at round 12 where the best of the best that originated from New South Wales and Queensland come together and they fight in a best of 3 series, and the third game must be played. So a lot of these Origin players, they will sit out in the regular season around this time because they have to go to train for those matches. So I mean, I assume everyone knows that, but I should just mention that just in case. All right, let's go back to the Supercoach section and talk about now the captains, which I was going to speak about before. You can have either a vice captain or a captain selected. Now, this is very obviously similar to a lot of basically every single other fantasy. The one thing you can also do is vice captaincy looping. Now, do not think that you can do a vice captain loop in round 1 when every single one of your players are playing. That will catch you out. Now, the one thing you obviously want to do is vice captain the player that's playing before the captain's player. I've actually heard stories of people that say, I didn't realize he was playing after. I put my vice captain and they were actually playing after my captain. That's wild. Make sure your vice captain is playing before your captain, because what you can do, now I'm going to show you here. Let's just say Sydney Roosters are playing before Broncos. So at the moment, I've got Sydney Roosters James Tedesco as my vice captain, and I've got Payne Haas as my captain. Think of the vice captain being a way to get an early captaincy choice and being like a second chance, but it comes first. So it's like a little pre-hit. You hit a little feature on the poker, you get a little pre-hit. You know what I mean? So essentially what's going to happen is if James Tedesco does really, really well, he gets like 160 or 200 points. He goes absolutely massive, and you have him as a vice captain. You can then bring in a player that's from your bench or from your reserves, as long as they haven't played and they're not locked in, that is either on a bye, maybe they're not even playing in the NRL at the moment, which is called enough. So a player that's just never plays, never even in a team, just sits in the back in the audience with the other fans and just never plays, that's called enough. Maybe it's a bye player, so that team is on a bye. So for example, this is actually true, the West Tigers have a bye in round 1. Let's say I have Terrell May in my team or Samuela Fainu in my team. They're going to have the round 1 bye, and I have Tedesco. Tedesco goes huge. So all I do is I click the C on Samuela Fainu. Now, all this does is tell Supercoach that once it sort of sees it as this player didn't play, it automatically makes your vice captain a captain, and then they will get double points. Now, again, you must do this with a player that's either injured. I'm pretty sure, maybe someone can tell me in the comments. I actually mind blanked on this, but I don't think it matters with the injured player. I think the injured player doesn't matter whether they play before or after the vice captaincy pick, but you would generally want a player that isn't playing after the vice captaincy pick. I don't want to confuse anyone there, but just remember the vice captaincy pick must be before the captaincy, and you want to use a player that's either on a bye, that's injured, or that isn't playing in a team, is completely nuffed out. and then you'll get the double points. So that's how the vice captaincy loop works. Now, let's say James Tedesco does really, really poor. That doesn't matter. The VC would stay on him, and then your captain would play, and you'd get the double points for the captain score. You also have 4 reserves that you can choose from. So your 4 reserves, you generally want to choose. No, you don't generally want to choose. You definitely want to choose from the amount of people on the bench. So you have 26 players in total, and then on the bench you have 4 reserves that you can choose from. These points will score. These points will be the best from the bench, okay? So you want to choose the best players you have on your bench and make them your reserves. This is really, really important, because at the end of the round, when your total points come together, this is all going to be included, okay? So this is a total gathering, your reserves, your starters, and your flex position. Now, what happens in Supercoach is you'll get your lowest point or lowest score will drop out, okay? Now, why this came into play last season was, again, a lot of people were unhappy about sort of skewed scores, because one week you just got this really bad score from someone. Let's say James Tedesco got injured in the first 2 minutes. He gets a 6 and you're stuck with him. Now, the case is that score will drop out. Now, if you have a player that you've got in your starting team and they just randomly didn't play. Let's say you think they're going to play, and then 30 minutes before the game, their wife got pregnant. They had to go to hospital. They witnessed their son or daughter getting born, and they don't play. All that is going to happen is you will get what's called an auto emergency. Now, an auto emergency is the lowest scoring player from any position on your bench. They will autofill into that spot or autofill with that score. Now, please let me know if I'm incorrect in anything I say in the comments, but I've been told that's exactly how it works, and I'm pretty sure that is correct. So, all you need to do in setting up your team is one main thing, or 2. First, you want to make sure your vice captain is before your captain, but you always want to have players that are playing first on your starting team. Then you want to have the players that are playing at the latest as your reserves. The reason being, if anything does happen, you can then maneuver and move your reserves. You can change your reserves, but once they're on the starting team, they'll be locked in. So you just always want it to be like that. Again, I'll say it again. Your starting team should always be the players that are playing first in the week, and then your reserves should be the players that are playing towards the end of the round. Very simple. So we've talked about vice captaincy, captaincy, how the looping works. We've talked about break evens. We've talked about how to set up your team in a simplistic form, the way you look to set up your team. So where's the value, where you can go to find content on that. We've talked about auto emergency. We've talked about the reserves as well. And that is basically Supercoach in a nutshell. Now, we've also spoken about trades. We've spoken about boosting. I honestly don't think there's too much more to speak about. Let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure we have gone through it all. I did have a little bit of a notes column here, but if I have left anything out, you let me know in the comments below, but I'm pretty sure I've gathered everything. VC and captain, how to set up your bench. We've gone through that. Flex position, we've talked about that. One thing I actually might talk about, to be honest with you guys, is just one thing to do with the flex position, especially if you're new. Now, as I said to you, the flex position can be any position in Supercoach. Now, if you've never played Supercoach before, it is vastly different to NRL Fantasy. So the highest scoring position is fullback. It is the running theme, and then your lowest scoring position is hooker. Now, you will get a bit of gems here and there, possibly like Blake Brayley last season had a really good scoring season. He was about 400 points in front of the rest. He's a hooker for the Cronulla Sharks. Sure, that's fine. But in general, with the flex position, what people are usually doing is having 3 fullbacks. Now, I'm not saying that this is the must-do, set in stone, this is the way you play Supercoach. It's completely up to you how you attack it. You could have a cheapie that's a halfback. You could have 2 really nicely priced halfbacks like Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown, then run the cheapie Ethan Sanders in the flex from Canberra, who's 200 or so thousand, and use him as a cash flow asset. That's completely up to you. But the flex position is another way that you can have a different strategy in the team. All right. I think that is it. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm pretty sure I've explained everything 25 minutes in. Again, like, subscribe, and comment if you did enjoy the video. And of course, please 5-star review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify podcast. Thank you so much for watching, guys. It is Wolfie here from the Rage Traders. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, even if I didn't forget anything, in my personal opinion, or you're just like, hey, what about this? Just put it in the comments. I'll get back to you. Happy to help out. Hope I didn't forget anything, but if I did, let me know. Peace, guys. Thanks for watching and enjoy Supercoach 2026.